You spend 16 years building a life with someone, sharing a home, dreams, and a future. Then one day, a video message shatters it all. A cheating wife, a hidden lover, and a betrayal so deep, it demanded more than just heartbreak. It demanded strategy. My name is Brenner, 43 years old and sitting at my granite island in Minneapolis watching my wife of 16 years smiling on my tablet screen. She angled the camera to showcase a platinum necklace that must have cost a small fortune. Behind her was a luxury suite I didn't recognize. Definitely not her brother's practical condo in Chicago, where she was supposedly visiting. "Don't worry," she said, the champagne flute tilting precariously. "You'll figure something out." I did. I set my tablet down and surveyed our home. The Scandinavian-inspired furnishings Olivia had insisted on purchasing 3 years ago. The matted photographs from adventures where she'd always appeared distracted. The costly bathroom remodel that never quite met her expectations. I'd invested nearly 2 decades constructing a life with a woman who could film herself laughing while dismantling that very existence. This realization didn't strike me as a revelation. More like confirmation of something I had sensed instinctively but refused to acknowledge. As a cybersecurity analyst, I'd established a career on identifying subtle inconsistencies, elements that didn't correspond, irregularities and patterns that indicated deeper issues. And for months, I've been detecting them at home. The extended business trips that gained an extra day, credit card transactions at bistros and districts she never referenced, incoming messages that made her smile in a manner I hadn't witnessed directed toward me in years. I picked up my tablet again and watched the conclusion of the video. Olivia's flawless smile, her meticulously arranged hair, the assurance of someone who believed they'd prevailed. She consistently approached our marriage like a competition, but I hadn't recognized the wager until now. I typed a simple response, "Smart move." She wouldn't comprehend my meaning. Not immediately, but eventually she would. I walked to my home workspace and unlocked the side cabinet of my desk. Inside lay a folder containing account statements, portfolio documents, and legal papers I'd collected over the previous 5 months. The evidence of my silent preparation for precisely this circumstance. Olivia had always found financial discussions tedious. She'd sign whatever I presented, never inquiring beyond whether we were financially secure. It was the single aspect of our marriage where she'd entirely trusted me. That trust was about to become the costliest error of her existence. I encountered Olivia when we were both 27. She worked in medical device sales, all sophistication and poise, while I managed network security for a regional credit union. Our relationship progressed quickly. 7 months from initial meeting to wedding ceremony, everything about her felt dynamic compared to my methodical temperament. "We complement each other perfectly," she used to say. "You organize, I experience." For years, that equilibrium functioned. I constructed our financial foundation systematically, optimized retirement contributions, invested in stable tech portfolios, purchased our residence when the market favored buyers, developed databases tracking every expenditure. Meanwhile, Olivia introduced spontaneity. Impromptu getaways, culinary gatherings, the professional connections that helped me secure larger security contracts. The initial fracture appeared 4 years ago. I discovered a credit statement with a $4,200 charge at a boutique jeweler. It wasn't near my birthday or our anniversary. "It's for my sister," she explained when questioned. I acknowledged and remained silent. When her sister visited 2 months later, wearing no new accessories. Then followed the extended evenings at industry functions, the designer wardrobe, the personal coach who messaged at unusual hours, the business trips that returned her appearing more detached than revitalized. I remained silent. Instead, I began to prepare. When I accepted a significant cybersecurity contract with Nexus Tech 2 years ago, I established a separate LLC for liability protection. I reconfigured our retirement portfolio. Officially, we maintained one primary account in both names, but I'd reallocated 75% of our assets to accounts connected to my business entities. Olivia had authorized but never monitored these. 10 months ago, I noticed a pattern of unexplained withdrawals from our shared checking account. Modest amounts initially, then increasing. When confronted, Olivia attributed them to online purchases. "You work such long hours," she said. "It helps me cope with solitude." Last month, she began inquiring about our retirement holdings, the total value, how readily accessible it was, whether I'd updated the beneficiaries. Just contemplating the future, she said. I observed her scrolling through her phone that evening, smiling at something beyond my view. The platinum pendant I'd never purchased gleamed at her throat. The indicators were evident. I simply hadn't wanted to perceive the complete situation. So I transferred additional assets, secured further documentation, and anticipated what I understood was imminent. After viewing Olivia's video a second time, I sat in my office feeling remarkably composed. 16 years condensed to a 38-second clip and a woman I no longer recognized. I contacted our financial institution first. Mr. Brenner, we were actually about to reach out to you, the security department representative said. There's been some unusual activity on your joint retirement account. I'm aware, I replied. My wife has attempted to withdraw the funds without my knowledge or consent. I did not authorize this transaction. The representative's tone transformed from concern to determination. In that case, sir, we need to initiate a security investigation immediately. I can implement a temporary freeze on the account during our inquiry. Please proceed. By the time I concluded the call, I'd activated what I recognized would be the conclusion of my marriage. Not the betrayal that had transpired long before, but my response to it. I accessed the document I'd prepared months earlier and never hoped to utilize. Divorce petition forms partially completed. Awaiting specifics I now possessed abundantly. I updated the information, added the latest evidence, and saved the file to transmit to my attorney the following morning. My phone indicated a message from Olivia. Did you see what I sent? I didn't respond. The account restriction would become effective within hours. The security investigation would ensue, and Olivia would discover that her elaborate exit strategy contained a critical defect. I moved through our residence that night, genuinely observing it for the first time in years. How minimal of myself existed in these spaces. The furnishings I hadn't selected. The artwork that held no significance for me. The kitchen where I rarely prepared meals anymore because Olivia preferred restaurants. I'd invested nearly 2 decades constructing a life centered around a woman who'd been planning to discard me. Every business trip, every late evening, every unexplained purchase. They were increments toward this moment, toward Michael, whoever he might be. In her bedroom, I examined her wardrobe and noted what was missing. The premium pieces. The favorites. She'd been relocating incrementally for weeks without my awareness. Or perhaps I had observed, but chosen not to acknowledge. I slept in the guest room that night on bedding that didn't carry her fragrance. When I awakened, I felt unburdened in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Over coffee, I emailed the divorce petition to my attorney with a request for immediacy. Then I contacted Vincent, a digital forensic specialist I'd collaborated with on a corporate breach case 18 months earlier. I need to trace certain financial activities, I informed him, and I need it documented for legal proceedings. I didn't experience anger, not even resentment anymore. Just lucidity. Olivia had made her decision. Now I would make mine. 3 days following Olivia's video message, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, voicemails, emails, all from her, all with increasing urgency. What's happening with our account? Why can't I access the funds? The bank is mentioning something about potential fraud. I allowed them to accumulate without responding. My attorney had recommended minimal interaction, and I was adhering to that counsel precisely. Everything required documentation, straightforward and procedural. On the 4th day, my doorbell chimed at 7:30 a.m. I opened it to find Olivia standing there. Her immaculate appearance frayed noticeably. The confident woman from the video had vanished, replaced by someone with disheveled makeup and creased clothing. "What have you done?" she demanded, pushing past me into the house. I maintained a measured tone. I reported unauthorized access to our accounts. The bank has restricted the funds, pending investigation. Unauthorized. She laughed, though it sounded hollow. "I'm your wife. I have every right. The account required dual authorization for substantial withdrawals. You falsified my signature on the documentation. That constitutes fraud, Olivia." Her expression shifted, the facade slipping to reveal calculation beneath. "You can't substantiate that. The bank possesses the documentation, and I have your video conveniently explaining your intentions." She altered tactics then, moving closer. Her voice softened. "Noah, this is simply a misunderstanding. I was frustrated. I wasn't thinking clearly." I stepped backward. You were lucid enough to orchestrate this for months. Lucid enough to pack your preferred clothing. Lucid enough to forge documents. We can resolve this, she said, reaching for my arm. Whatever you believe happened with Michael. I filed for divorce, I interrupted. The papers will be delivered to you today. This conversation needs to proceed through our attorneys. The facade collapsed entirely. You'd have nothing without me, she hissed. I established your professional connections. I made you appear successful. You were just some unremarkable tech specialist before me. I almost smiled at how predictable this was. And yet, somehow I managed to safeguard our assets from your attempt to misappropriate them. Imagine that. Her eyes narrowed. The retirement account contained over $750,000. It held $195,000, I corrected, which the bank has now restricted. The withdrawal has been identified as potentially fraudulent activity. What about the remainder? Our portfolio exceeded $1 million. Now I did smile. You never did attend our financial discussions. Understanding dawned gradually on her features. She walked to the kitchen counter and retrieved her phone, frantically accessing banking applications and entering credentials. Where is it? She demanded. Where's the rest of our money? In accounts you authorized but never monitored. Accounts linked to my LLC, which you cannot access without my approval. The look she directed at me then was pure animosity. You anticipated this? I shook my head. I protected us from liability exposure when I accepted the Nexus Tech contract. Standard business procedure. The fact that it also safeguarded our assets from you is just, what would you call it? A smart move. She hurled her phone against the wall. It rebounded harmlessly and clattered to the floor. You think you've succeeded? Michael has resources. He has influence. Then you've figured something out, I said, employing her own words. But you'll be proceeding without the retirement funds you attempted to misappropriate. And given the fraud investigation, possibly with a criminal record. She departed an hour later after additional threats and several attempts to access my computer. I replaced the locks that afternoon. The subsequent 2 weeks unfolded like a case study in desperation. Olivia attempted every approach: intimidation, emotional manipulation, seduction, legal pressure. Her attorney, an aggressive professional in a tailored suit, transmitted demanding correspondence claiming I had concealed marital assets and engaged in financial impropriety. I forwarded each communication to my counsel without commentary. Meanwhile, Vincent, the digital forensic specialist, was uncovering the complete extent of Olivia's deception. She's been diverting funds for approximately 10 months, he informed me during our meeting at his downtown office. He presented a folder across his desk. Minor withdrawals initially, then larger amounts always just beneath the threshold that would trigger alerts to your phone. I opened the folder to discover meticulously organized spreadsheets, credit statements, cash withdrawals, electronic transfers. In total, she's diverted approximately $93,000 from your joint accounts, Vincent continued. The majority allocated to personal expenditures, designer apparel, accessories, and exclusive restaurants. I nodded, processing this information with a detachment that surprised even me. But here's where it becomes particularly interesting, Vincent said, indicating a highlighted section. Approximately $25,000 was transferred directly to this account. He displayed transfers to an unfamiliar account at a different institution. The account belongs to Michael Harrington, 39 years old, employed as a division director for MedTech Solutions. He has a history of relationships with affluent married women. I looked up. You identified all this? How? Vincent smiled discreetly. I excel at my profession, and Mr. Harrington demonstrates minimal effort in concealing his activities. This isn't his first involvement with a soon-to-be-divorced woman's finances. Something cold settled in my stomach. Not merely betrayal, then. Something deliberate, strategic. The timing warrants particular attention, Vincent added. The transfers to Harrington commenced 4 months after his appointment at MedTech, the same organization where your wife's sales territory expanded last year. I recalled Olivia's enthusiasm regarding the new client acquisition, how she'd mentioned the innovative medical device company expanding into her region, how she'd suddenly required more evening engagements and weekend conferences. There's additional information, Vincent said, turning a page. Harrington has established this pattern previously. Twice that I can document, both instances involving sales representatives from companies his employer partnered with. both instances involving significant financial transfers preceding a dramatic marital dissolution. The elements aligned, not merely an affair, but a predatory pattern, a calculated targeting of my wife, our finances, our relationship. Is she aware? I asked. Vincent shrugged. Difficult to determine. She might be complicit, or she might be another victim. Regardless, she's been transferring your assets to him for months. I considered Olivia's confident expression in that video. The new necklace, the designer handbags, the way she'd laughed while informing me she'd emptied our retirement. She knows, I said quietly. Perhaps not everything, but sufficient. Before departing Vincent's office, I posed one final question. The account liquidation she attempted. Could Harrington have guided her through that process? Vincent nodded. Almost certainly. The documentation was falsified professionally, and the timing immediately preceding a holiday weekend suggests someone familiar with banking procedures. Someone who recognized it might delay fraud detection. I thanked Vincent and left with the folder of evidence. During the drive home, I felt something transform within me. This wasn't solely about preserving my assets anymore. It concerned stopping a predator, and possibly, though I scarcely acknowledged it to myself, about rescuing Olivia from her own catastrophic decision. With Vincent's evidence secured, I met with my attorney, Sarah Reynolds, in her downtown office. The expansive windows overlooked the Minneapolis skyline, but I barely registered the view as we discussed strategy. This significantly alters our approach, Sarah said, examining the documents. We have evidence of systematic financial misconduct, potential conspiracy, definite fraud. I nodded, observing her experienced scrutiny of the figures Vincent had compiled. We have 3 potential courses, she continued. First, we proceed with the divorce as planned, utilizing this to ensure favorable asset division. Second, we pursue criminal charges against both your wife and this Harrington individual. Or third, she looked up, meeting my gaze, we employ this information strategically. Strategically for what purpose? To secure everything you're entitled to in the divorce settlement, and potentially to recover the funds already transferred. I contemplated this, evaluating the options methodically. What about Harrington's previous victims? The other women? Sarah raised an eyebrow. You're concerned about them? If he's established this pattern repeatedly, he'll continue. The pattern itself is significant. My attorney reclined in her chair. We could potentially communicate with their representatives, share information, and develop a stronger collective case. I reached my decision. Then initiate with the strategic approach. Prepare for criminal proceedings if necessary, and connect with those other attorneys. Within days, we had established a coordinated response. 2 of Harrington's previous targets had agreed to share their experiences and financial records. The pattern was unmistakable. The predatory nature is undeniable. Meanwhile, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I contacted the fraud division at our financial institution with the complete documentation. They escalated the investigation immediately, expanding it to include Harrington and the suspicious transfers. I also communicated with MedTech Solutions Ethics Compliance Director. An anonymous report initially, suggesting they investigate potential conflicts of interest in their divisional leadership, just sufficient to initiate their examination in the appropriate direction. Then I waited, not passively, but strategically. I monitored account activities. I documented every communication from Olivia. I prepared our residents by removing anything of personal significance, securing essential documents and modifying all passwords. 7 days following my meeting with Sarah, Olivia's communication tone changed abruptly. Her messages shifted from accusatory to concerned. We need to talk. It's important. Please respond. I believe I've made a terrible mistake. There are things about Michael you should know. I didn't reply, but I forwarded each message to Sarah. 2 days later, Olivia appeared at my office building as I was leaving work. She appeared distressed. The confidence completely vanished. He's not who I believed him to be, she said, falling into step beside me. Michael has been deceiving me about everything. I continued walking toward the parking structure, saying nothing. I'm serious, Noah. He's done this before. Exploited women financially. I just discovered this from his former partner. I stopped and turned to face her. I know. So does our attorney. So does the bank's fraud department. So does his employer's ethics team. Her complexion paled. You knew. I had a digital forensics specialist trace every dollar you've transferred to him during the past year. All $93,000. We've connected with his previous victims. We have the complete behavioral pattern documented. She seemed to falter slightly. Noah, I didn't realize. You must believe me. Actually, I'm not obligated to believe anything you say anymore, Olivia. That's the singular advantage of all this. I turned and resumed walking, leaving her standing in the plaza as the winter sun began to set. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Thursday. My attorney had prepared me thoroughly, but nothing could have readied me for the sight of Olivia and Michael seated together at the respondents' table. She appeared diminished somehow. He looked irritated. They'd arrived together, despite the mounting evidence against him. Despite everything she now understood, I wondered what influence he still maintained over her. Our case was announced. The judge, a composed woman with tortoiseshell glasses, reviewed the documents before her with thorough attention. Before we proceed, she began, I understand the plaintiff has submitted supplementary evidence regarding financial impropriety. Sarah stood. Yes, Your Honor. We have documented systematic fraud, including falsified authorization documents and transfer of marital assets to a third party. She presented the comprehensive file we'd assembled, the bank records, the forged paperwork, the video Olivia had transmitted admitting to liquidating our retirement accounts, the transfers to Harrington's personal account, and then the final element. Testimony from Harrington's previous targets describing the identical behavioral pattern. I observed Harrington's expression as this evidence was presented. The irritation transformed to calculation, then to barely concealed anxiety when the judge directed her attention toward him. He leaned over to whisper urgently to his counsel. Mr. Harrington, the judge said firmly, this court has evidence suggesting you may have engaged in a pattern of financial exploitation. While that's not the primary matter before me today, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal investigation. Olivia made a faint sound beside him. Not quite a gasp. More like the dissipation of her final hope. The judge continued, given the evidence of financial misconduct, I am restricting all disputed assets pending final resolution. And Mrs. Brenner, you should recognize that the court regards attempts to conceal or transfer marital property with extreme disapproval. 6 months later, I stood on the terrace of my new condominium in downtown Minneapolis, watching the sunset illuminate the city copper. The divorce was concluded. The financial matters were resolved. The legal process had completed its course. Ultimately, Olivia had turned against Harrington, providing evidence that assisted the district attorney in constructing a stronger case against him. Whether from self-preservation or genuine remorse, I never inquired. The criminal charges against her were reduced in exchange for her cooperation. She avoided incarceration, but would be making restitution payments for years. Recent information indicated she'd relocated to her hometown in Wisconsin, accepting an entry-level position with a different company. Harrington hadn't fared as favorably, with 3 former victims testifying against him. Combined with Olivia's evidence, he was confronting significant penalties for fraud and financial exploitation. I recovered most of our assets, though not all. Some things, once damaged, cannot be restored completely, but sufficient to rebuild. My security consultancy had expanded during this period. Ironically, a crisis has a way of clarifying priorities. My phone indicated a message from Layla, a software developer I'd been seeing for several weeks. Intelligent, straightforward, with her own technology firm and a refreshing candor about her aspirations. We were progressing gradually, both carrying our respective histories. Still confirmed for dinner? Her message read. Looking forward to it, I replied. I went inside to prepare, passing the single photograph I'd retained from my marriage. Olivia and I during our honeymoon. Both smiling, both believing in the future we imagined we'd create. I didn't preserve it from sentimentality or regret, merely as a reminder that trust should be earned consistently, not granted unconditionally. The retirement accounts were now exclusively in my name. The passwords were modified. The documentation is explicit. Lesson internalized. Equilibrium restored.